and I'm still working to post this within the group here. So Stephen, for those that are joining us and those that will be watching this recording afterwards, could you just explain a little bit about yourself and your history with mediumship and spiritualism? And you're muted right now, my friend.
All right, now I'm not muted, so you can actually hear me.
Right.
But see, if you're really psychic, you'd be telepathic enough to be able to know exactly what I'm saying or thinking. But no, I'm actually, I live in California right now, but I'm actually, I grew up in Massachusetts, and I work as a medium, and I don't know, I've been involved in medium, it seems like centuries, mediumship, and I'm really into teaching it, and I teach a lot of workshops and classes all over the place, online as well as offline. And I'm the author of Mediumship Mastery, and I really like being able to present this and help people with this. And I think what you're doing, Lorraine, is really great.
I thank you for that. And again, I apologize for that difficulty that we've had.
Reach a lot of people with it who are interested in developing and everything. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Stephen. So how many decades did you say that?
Oh, centuries. You know, I'm 86 now, so the formaldehyde has kicked in, and you know. No, I've been into it for years and everything. And I got into meditation when I was little, things like that too. So I was fortunate to really get exposed to a lot of this stuff. But I was always drawn to it when I was little. And the first time the spirit world talked to me is when I was 2, which is pretty normal. It's not like that's anything special. Like,
you're right. Okay.
You know, everybody has these types of abilities. It's not like just because someone's developed, they're on some type of pedestal. And mediumship also, it's really, people sometimes think of it as being, oh, someone's a medium, they're developed clairvoyantly, they must be super spiritual. But really, mediumship's just like art or like music. Everybody has this varying degrees, this ability, and through education and learning, it's something which can be developed and enhanced. But spirituality is something which is totally different.
How would you describe the difference between spirituality then and mediumship? And I really like what you just said there right now, is that we all have that ability, because a lot of people I have found actually grapple with the idea of, am I gifted? And I personally, I'm a little adverse to the idea of people talking about being gifted, because I feel that it takes on this sort of, this is just my thoughts, that it takes
it's like an ego thing. It's like, I'm really super special and I've got these abilities. I'm you know, the 7th daughter of the 7th daughter. I was born from a Romanian family. We traveled on a gypsy cart for years, and what a sign of Cancer, which is an extremely psychic sign on the 3rd day of the 3rd month. You know, this type of thing. That's just baloney. I mean, the thing is, everybody has this ability. Now, everybody, I mean, I think has artistic ability. There's definitely some people that come in with a lot more technical ability, or maybe they're just a bit more creatively oriented. But there's different gifts of the spirit, and everybody has this. You know, it's how you use it, which is spiritual. So the difference between spirituality has to do with your relationship with God, your devotion to God, developing your spiritual character, your morals, your ethics, these types of things, as opposed to someone develops clairvoyance. Well, that's nice. Or they can hear spirit voices. Well, there's lots of people institutionalized who can hear spirit voices as well, but they're not necessarily elevated. It's how you use it. And the real idea behind it is to use it to help other people, and not just people here, but it also helps people in the spirit world as well. So it's pretty neat.
And so how do you're saying that it helps people in the spirit world? And I feel that oftentimes this aspect is left out about the healing that we can provide.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's like, I mean, every single one of us, you know, we have these temporary material bodies. So at one point or another, what's going to happen? We're all going to kick the bucket. We're going to go to the spirit world. And we have relationships here, hopefully some functional ones, and we probably have a lot of dysfunctional ones too. But we have connections with people. So it's pretty normal to want to stay in touch with people. You know, if you have children, you want to be connected to them, you want to influence them and guide them in a positive way. Now, you can just imagine how challenging it is. But on top of that, if you have people who you care about in the physical world and you're in the spirit world, and they're not even open to this stuff. I mean, maybe they don't even know about it. Or maybe they're just completely atheistic or just think this is a bunch of bunk. Or they perhaps follow some religion which, you know, teaches you're not supposed to do this. Or just one reason or another. What to speak in a general sense, people tend to be very analytically oriented. So consequently, how are you going to reach them? I mean, yes, you can probably, if you're fortunate, when they're not being analytical, put some thoughts into their heads. But in all practical purposes, I mean, you're not really going to be able to connect with them. Maybe while they're asleep during the dream state, you know, their unconscious mind's open. So mediumship is really helpful. And sometimes the session that you have with a medium, it's more for the individuals in the spirit world than it is for the people here. But people don't always understand that because they, you know, they spent the $500 with the famous celebrity medium for 15 minutes and they expect all these things a certain way. They have the whole agenda planned out, but the spirit world sets the agenda. And it can be really healing too. I mean, you can have someone that really haven't had such a good relationship with someone. Maybe they've been really abusive or they just could have done better. So by coming through, it helps them with their soul progression. It helps them perhaps with their emotional healing or make
and I feel that is perhaps maybe the greatest gift about mediumship is the healing that we're in fact able to provide to those in spirit that are able to come through and to speak perhaps words of regret or words that they didn't have the opportunity to maybe fully express.
Yeah.
Or perhaps to share the realizations that they've had since they've passed from the physical plane.
Well, yeah, that's because when you go to the spirit world, I always say, you know, if you needed 50 years of psychotherapy and you didn't get it here, what's going to happen? You're going to end up having to work on those things when you go to the spirit world. So when someone comes through from spirit, you know, yeah, they're the personality, you know, they're the same, but ideally they maybe received counseling, they've therapeutically approached things a bit differently, they've made some kind of progression, and there may be an understanding of, oh, I've got to take responsibility for the way I've been, and I've got to work on things. So it's not like you just, I mean, hopefully every one of us, all of you watching this, you know, we've all grown. If you go back 10 years ago, who you were, where you were at, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, you've made progression. You know, we make a lot of mistakes. Sometimes
Yes.
We can stay in a pattern where we repeat the same error over and over again. But ideally, because God loves us so much, we're given all these opportunities to grow, aren't we? Because the doorway to reformation and growth, it's never slammed shut. You know, there's always going to be another opportunity, even if you mess up massively. So in the spirit world, you know, as they begin to approach things, they're in touch with higher teachers there, they're in touch with healers there, and they're having to really review their entire life, how they've affected other people especially. So someone who's gone through that, it doesn't mean they were elevated yet, but hopefully they've taken responsibility, which is a big thing, and they're starting to put energy in to actually realize, hey, I've got to work on things. So coming through and being able to say, I'm really, really, really sorry the way I was toward you. I could have handled things a bit differently. You know, I was really messed up. And I know that I was wrong, you know, and I'm trying to improve. That's like a really big deal. It's significant. You know, it's asking for forgiveness or maybe forgiving something for something that they've done toward them. So it's pretty deep. It isn't just some type of superficial, oh, you're going to meet a man with a gold tooth next week and you're going to have pizza Wednesday night, like fortune telling, or even sometimes too with mediumship. I mean, people can get really caught up with, oh, I've got to bring through and prove survival. I mean, if you ask some mediums, they'll say, well, the purpose of mediumship is to prove the survival of life after death. But I'll tell you this, if someone is atheistic or skeptical about life after death, that's definitely important. Or if someone is really, really in great pain because they've lost someone close to them through the physical destruction of the body, that type of evidential communication is really important. But really, what we really a lot of times need to hear is actually details in terms of helping us with our soul progression and healing. So it's a lot deeper than just providing evidence of survival. That's good for what it is, but that's not a complete, that's very incomplete in terms of what the purpose of why the spirit world works with spirit communication. And mediumship is a lot more than just developing clairvoyance or clairaudience or clairsentience. Now, those mental phases of mediumship are there, and they're very good for what they do, but there's all these other different types of expressions or phases of mediumship, both mental phases as well as physical phases, which can be developed. But then people don't always even understand these or know so much about these phases.
And I agree with that oftentimes, especially earlier on in our mediumship journey, understanding this process, as we spoke, many people enter mediumship to really understand what they feel are their spiritual gifts. So early on, they may not have that connection as to all of the healing attributes that mediumship can provide. So I feel that you really expressed that really wonderfully. Could I ask you, in this similar context, what is your thought to the idea of earthbound spirits? Well, oftentimes people talk about this.
Well, the thing is, I mean, people, when people are here and they go into the spirit world, you take all the baggage with you. Now, obviously, if let's say someone has, physical cancer disease, that doesn't go with you because that's physical. But on a subtle level, all of this stuff that's not so good goes with you. Dysfunctional thinking, imbalances on emotional levels. Now, there's people who can work with you in the spirit world with that, but you could certainly have someone, they're in a situation where maybe it's a combat situation, they get blown to bits, they're instantly in the spirit world, they don't even realize that it's happened, that type of thing initially and everything. So there's free will involved. So certainly in my Father's house are many mansions. So when Jesus talks about that, he's not talking about housing developments in Chicago. What he's talking about is he's talking about all these different levels of the spirit world. So you definitely have regions in the spirit world which are the people in these particular areas aren't really on such a high type of level, so to speak. And you could have someone through their own ignorance or through their own free will who really doesn't put any kind of energy into their progress, so to speak. They birds of a feather flock together, so they want to be around similar vibrations. Just like if you go into some dive, some type of sleazy nightclub or place, bar, people all drinking and really heavy, yucky energy. And if you're sensitive, you can just feel that, how yucky it is. But someone of that vibration is going to gravitate toward that. They're not even going to be able to notice the difference, so to speak. So similar, if you go into the spirit world, yes, there are higher teachers, but it's not like instantly everyone's on this elevated level and wants to grow. Now, the thing when it comes to earthbound spirits, this type of thing, I think people can also get carried away with it. I mean, I'm trained with like hypnotherapy, this type of thing too. And people, I can think back, going back 20 or 30 years ago, a lot of people into this thing, oh my gosh, you've got like 77 entities, they're stuck in your aura. Each one of those 77 entities has another 12 entities from a past life. I mean, it can be really silly. And I suppose you can spend a lot of money getting these entities released. But I don't like to think of myself as an entity. I'm a personality. We're all souls. We're all eternal consciousness. And there's always opportunities for healing. Now, a really good book on earthbound spirits, and that was written by a medical doctor. He's a psychiatric doctor. His name was Carl Wickland. And he actually practiced in the Los Angeles area. He had a clinic. And his wife was a trance medium. And so they would work, with spirits who were influencing people. And so these people would end up having certain just imbalances with their thinking or how they were going about doing things. And they would work with healing. They would communicate through the wife, and then they would help these spirits receive help and connect with other healers in the spirit world who would be able to help them. And actually, there's two different books that were written by Carl Wickland, and one is called 30 Years Among the Dead. Has anyone read that out there? Yeah, I think you can get it free online because it's public domain, and there's a lot of place you could certainly purchase it as well. It's worth getting.
So, Stephen, one
The
more
other
time.
book is The
What is the name
Gateway
of
to
that book?
Understanding. 30 Years Among the Dead. And then the other book, which is also by Carl Wickland, is called Gateway to Understanding. And that's not just about spirit obsession. There's other aspects of mediumship in it as well. And those are really good books. I've got copies right here on the bookshelf.
So, because that will probably be of interest to many of the listeners viewing right now.
There's some really good, there's really excellent books on mediumship and, you know, scientific investigation of spiritualism and psychic phenomena. But the problem is, I mean, a lot of the stuff that's being published now, I mean, it's commercial. So it'll all be about, you know, Lorraine, she's such a wonderful medium, and all these examples of the readings you've done, your new cable TV show. And, you know, it's really entertaining to read, but it's not really a lot of depth about development, you know, how it works. And, you know, what, you know, if you study, I mean, a lot of mediums, if we go back, you know, just pioneering mediums in the 19th century, even in 20th century, you know, what did they experience? How did they go about doing things? And so in terms of development, there's so much of value that can be gained from reading that literature, but it's not something that you're going to find at Barnes and Noble. And, you know, you can find a lot of this on Amazon, because so much of the older works, because they're public domain, people do reprint them, which is really, really good. So there's quite a bit of literature, which is, you can actually purchase that way relatively inexpensively.
Would you be able to give the names of a couple of mediums that have done a lot of contribution to the development of mediumship that maybe perhaps some of the listeners may want to look up or research?
Yeah, well, one book, I mean, I shouldn't say one medium, not one book. He actually wrote a couple of different books, and he was quite famous, and his name was Arthur Ford. Have any of you ever heard of Arthur Ford?
I have not.
Well, if we go back, actually, he passed over, I guess it would have been 1971, but he was, if we go back, you know, after Harry Houdini ended up going to the spirit world, allegedly, you know, the code that Houdini had left for his wife was communicated through him, although there's some controversy about that. But Arthur Ford became very popular, very well known as a medium back in the 1920s in the States. He did work in 1937 in New Zealand and in Australia, and went to England in the 1920s. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who's the author of Sherlock Holmes, was greatly impressed with his demonstration of mediumship that he did in London. And he was very, very well known. I mean, most of the early, you know, spiritualist camps all over the place, he toured and he worked. The Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship was founded by him back in the 1950s, and that the idea behind that was taking people who were clergy or involved in the mainstream denominations of Christianity who were into psychical investigations. They did a lot of education, put on a lot of conferences in that time. But Arthur Ford, any of his books, one of them is like Known but Unknown. That's one of his books about him. And another autobiography that he wrote was called Nothing So Strange. And both of those detail how he got into it, and they have a lot of different examples and things about his experiences. So Arthur Ford is really cool. Another medium who's really pretty amazing was Cora L.V. Richmond, and she started out, she was a brilliant trance medium back in the 1850s. When she was a teenager, she was controlled by the spirit personality. So she became very, 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 very prominent in the United States, toured all of the major cities. And back then you didn't have microphones, but she would work in these large halls where, you know, you probably have 2,000-3,000 people who'd come to hear her speak. And she had a group of 12 spirits who were teachers. Each one of them was an authority or an expert in a different area, some, you know, science, anthropology, these types of things. And they would have, in those days, they would decide upon a question or questions. And then the spirits would pool their answers and they'd speak through her quite elaborately for a couple hours. And people could ask questions, this type of thing. But there were quite a few adolescent girls at that time period who became very, very, very well known as trance mediums, and they would tour around the country doing these types of lectures. They're uneducated, a lot of times very little formal education, and it demonstrated that there was higher intelligences working through them, because the information that would be conveyed was way beyond their understanding.
And that actually is really very fascinating when you're saying that. And so what do you feel about when you're saying that they're demonstrating information that's way beyond their understanding? Just how does the spirit world, some of these higher teachers in the spirit world, how do they bring through information or influence us here on the earth plane to be able to assist us with bringing through perhaps more knowledge? Or do they guide us when we're not even aware?
Yeah, well, I think what usually happens with someone is, let's just say someone comes into this life. In many cases, they probably, as part of karmically, that their calling is to be involved in mediumship. So there'll be a point in their life where they'll have different, maybe they lose someone close to them, or their husband runs off with the UPS driver and they're devastated. Their whole life is just in turmoil. And consequently, what happens is they end up having to seek out healing. They end up seeking out help, and they're influenced by the spirit world to find out about mediumship. Sometimes they start to have experiences where they hear spirit voices, or they start seeing things or feeling things around them, different psychic experiences. And so in the search for answers, in their quest and investigation for the truth, they end up being directed. Maybe they go to a mediumship demonstration, or maybe they have a private session with a medium. And as a result, usually what happens is they somehow influence things, where the person ends up training for mediumship. But a lot of effort goes into that. I mean, it's something that if someone's coming in here and that's what their calling is, I mean, it may be a lot of energy put into it to steer that person in that direction, because they're really very much looking for instruments to work through, because it helps them, and it also helps people here, and they're motivated by love. They want to help people get closer to God. They want people to open up more from their hearts and to work on themselves spiritually. And that's really what mediumship is about, because when we're working with it, we are working with the healing, and we're touching people on a soul level. It's not just some type of entertainment, although it can be very entertaining at times.
Well, that is true. It can be very entertaining, and it might also explain why I have found that many individuals that have entered into mediumship have seemed to really have a lot of challenges in their life, a lot of loss or a lot of challenges. And so perhaps it's just as you said, that they're being led this way, or there's some karmic.
Well, the thing is if we want to work with healing, I mean, who's going to be the best healer? The most effective healer is going to be someone who's been through the most. Why? Because first of all, and generally speaking, ideally, they're going to have empathy for others going through the same type of situation. But also, when you go through a lot of pain, where do you end up having to turn to? You have to turn to God. You have to really go inside yourself. And we can't really give something to someone that we don't have ourselves to some extent. So let's just say they lose someone really, they lose their child. Well, if they develop their mediumship, anybody who goes to them who's lost a child is really going to understand, my God, that person really feels for me. And they're going to be able to relate to them a lot better. And then the medium, of course, will be able to relate to the person. So with mediumship, someone doesn't have to be necessarily educated, or they don't necessarily have to be elevated spiritually to be a medium. Just by being able to relate to people, and people being able to relate to the medium, certain types of spirits are going to be able to come through you. Let's just say you have like someone's grandmother, and she might have been really messed up, like not really that elevated. Maybe she was an alcoholic, cursed all the time, used cuss words, just not, but she comes through from the spirit world. Well, if she's working through a medium who's of the same mindset as her, she's going to feel really comfortable coming through that medium. It's because it's all scientific. It's mind to mind, telepathic communication. Likewise, someone, maybe one of her loved ones, who's kind of the same way. Well, if they've got a medium like that, it's going to work really well, so to speak. So different spirits can communicate more efficiently through different types of mediums. That's one of the things that takes, because all of this is scientific. It's not just something magical that takes place.
And I really love the detail that you're able to bring into that explanation. So thank you for that, because I found that a lot of people would wonder, would have that experience and question. So thank you for
I'm looking over in the chat thing here. People have said different things. I was talking about different mediums, and Arthur Ford. Okay, so that's one of the mediums. And I also mentioned Cora L.V. Richmond, and there is a biography about her life, which was written by Harrison D. Barrett. Harrison D. Barrett was an amazing medium. He was actually up in Maine, and he was the first president of the National Spiritualist Association of Churches. But he wrote a biography of Cora L.V. Richmond, which you can look up. And that's in public domain, so you can purchase, reprint books of those. But she had lots of books and different discourses and stuff. She's very, very well known on the national level when she was prominent back in the 1800s.
Thank you. Could you go into a description, please, Stephen? I feel that some areas of confusion that people have with their mediumship is understanding the difference between unfoldment and development.
Oh, how would you well, with unfoldment, I remember you asked this to me a while back, and I think I said something, and then you posted it on.
And I loved it, and I wanted you to share it with others.
I guess the way I look at this, when you think of unfoldment, it's like a lotus or like a flower. The blossoms all come out if you envision it that way. So mediumship is something which is natural. It unfolds that way. But the development part is more of the skill part, the honing over the discipline of it. So if you think of like artistic development, let's say someone wants to study or they want to become adept at representational art. That's a lot of technical skill. There's a lot of hand-eye coordination involved with this, repetition, someone really just having patiently and persevering, putting a lot of long hours into that type of study. At the same time, the unfoldment of artistic abilities is more of like the inner qualities which are coming out. So with mediumship, you really kind of have both. I mean, sometimes people say it's a gift. Well, the real gift is the blessing, which is coming through us. But then really the other aspect of it is, anybody to some extent can develop these abilities. Just like we have physical eyes, we have physical ears. Well, we also, as spirits, we have the subtle body, which interpenetrates our physical body, and we have subtle senses. So having mystic powers or being able to utilize our subtle senses, there's nothing really extraordinary about that whatsoever.
So it's the development of the soul. Is that how you might say it?
Well, I think the thing with mediumship is the soul quality, like how we express our mediumship. If we're really doing it from a level of soul, it's going to be very beautiful, and it would be an expression of the soul qualities. But we could also be doing art, and we could be expressing it from a soul level as well too. And I think if we look at art, you can see there's some people that are really, really spiritually inspired, really, really, really in touch with God. And maybe the paintings or the works they're doing, whatever the medium, might be really, really devoted. And then you just have, we go to some very materialistically oriented thing. The consciousness of the artist is reflected through the work. So mediumship, its highest expression is more on a soul type of level. But I mean, you could just have all sorts of things. I mean, it's like with, sometimes people take this stuff very, very superficially. Oh, I'm at the party. Let's just go into trance now, Lorraine. See who you can bring through.
Yes.
It's actually, it's interesting, and I've seen this. I mean, just the last couple of months, I was looking, and I saw all these people. They're doing these like mediumship demos, and a lot of people drinking wine and stuff there. I mean, it's amazing. It's like not. It's really, 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 really important to have the reverence for what's taking place. Like attracts like, what we put out, how we're going about doing it. And it's not something that's supposed to be on some type of, we want to have fun, but it's not a party in a way which is debasing of what's actually taking place. It's not something that should be done on a superficial level. It's sacred.
And that's a wonderful reminder is how how we enter into that, or the frame of mind that we're entering into that. Now we have a question from one of the viewers here, and she wanted to know, what did you feel was a natural medium, or how would you describe a natural medium? What are your thoughts on that concept?
Well, the first of all, it's always natural. It's not artificial. It's not like NutraSweet. They have like artificial things you can put. Mediumship is totally natural. So when someone says, "Oh, I'm a natural medium," well, that's great. I mean, I guess I'm a natural artist, but over the years, I mean, I've taken a lot of classes in it, and I guess if I was to really want to focus in, I'd be studying with people who are, more technically proficient than me and more experienced. And mediumship's the same way. So someone can have a lot of natural abilities, but that doesn't know what they know what they're doing. That doesn't mean they're disciplined with it and everything. And I mean, it's interesting because you have a lot of people out there, which I've just observed in a general sense over the years, and they're self-taught, and they're sometimes really, really, they're nice people, really sincere, and they don't really know what they're doing. And it's pretty evident with, not saying something can't come through, but there's not any discipline over it, and there's not really understanding of how to connect and to deliver it and everything. So I can think of, I know myself, like I've always been into like healing, and for example, I'm really into massage. So before I went to massage school, I could really give a good massage because I have a lot of feeling with it, and I probably have good touch. But once I went to massage school, we studied like Swedish and deep tissue, went to school in Washington, D.C., and it was a couple-year program. And I learned all this anatomy, physiology that I didn't really know that well, and combined with all this, technically how to do certain techniques. And I can tell you, it was massively just, the education I received enhanced whatever I would have been able to just do naturally with massage. So someone might be really, really, really open. They can see spirits. Oh, I don't need training. Well, they do need training, because the more training you get, you're just going to be a lot better at what you're going to be able to do. If you work with other people who are experienced and they can help you with it. That's true with anything.
And I really like the way that you describe that. I feel that really helps bring an understanding to the idea of a natural medium, however, still able to benefit from the
artificial medium. We can't have any of them running around.
So we have another question here.
Ask lots of questions. I like this.
Guys, if you have any questions,
I'm looking at people's faces here, and some of you are looking very serious, which is okay. But ask some questions, because we want to have a good time. You don't want to get all, because everyone's like stuck at home wherever we are. I don't even know where everyone is. What time zones are people in out there? Because I'm in California. Usually we have people on the other side of the planet, and it's the middle of the night on these things.
Guys, you can speak up, take yourself off mute, or put it in the chat. So I got someone
I want you guys to be involved, because it's really important. This is how everyone learns. New York, New Jersey, South Dakota. Oh, wow. That's so cool. I've driven through South Dakota before. It's really good that someone's out there into this stuff.
We got someone from Ireland here.
Oh, Ireland. Excellent. I was just in the UK actually in February. Before all the virus stuff.
Some Canada.
Really cool.
We've got some Canadians here, and we have someone from New York. And
someone's asking here. This is from Karenna Lakshmi, and she asks, "Do you feel you can have too many teachers?" Okay, and I'm assuming, Karenna, you're talking about like earth plane teachers, not spirit teachers. You're talking about people who can teach you with mediumship. Yes. Now, I know some mediums, and I've seen this happen because I get students coming to me and they say, "Well, I'm coming to you for your classes, but I'm going to this one lady for classes, and don't let her know, because I have to, I had to agree just to study with her. She'll throw me out if I study with anyone else. Or I'm going to this one spiritualist church, and I can only go to the classes with the grand medium who runs the church." Has anyone ever had that happen? Or my way is the best way?
I know I've experienced some of that.
We can't have any inferior people teaching you mediumship. So you get these people like that. Now, I'll tell you this right now. When it comes to teaching and learning, there are definitely some teachers who just have superior teaching skills. There just are. And there's some people, they're really good mediums and they're not such good teachers. But you can learn different things from different people.
Exactly.
Like, you could probably learn a lot from me, but you know what? You went to Lorraine, you know, she's not as experienced as me. There's probably some things that she would just say in a way that I wouldn't be able to say, or I don't have the background with in my life for one reason or another. Or you go to someone else, they're from the UK, maybe they've experienced things a certain way, they levitate to the ceiling. Well, you know what? You want to learn levitation, you go there. It's not that one's better than, even you go to someone, they're not so good. It's learning how to compare and contrast. The more teachers you get, the better. It's like reading books. You're going to read some stuff which is garbage, or some things that you really think are great. 5 years down the road, you look back at it and you think, my gosh, that's just, why'd I believe that stuff? These aliens that were coming through, they lived on Venus, and now they're like, they hollowed out the inside of this mesa in Arizona, and they have this command headquarters there, and they've chosen me as their channel. And you believed it 5 years ago, but as you evolve, you realize I was just deluded, you see? I mean that in a nice way.
Now, that brings me to an interesting topic. Stephen, in your book, you spoke about delusion, how some people may be unintendedly delusional with what they're receiving. Could you elaborate a little bit about that so people may have this understanding?
I think everyone here, you know, you're all working as mediums, you're learning, you know, I mean, you never stop learning. So it goes through your mind. It's mental mediumship. So mental mediumship, it's a subjective experience. It involves our minds, our intellect's there, our emotions. We could be really balanced or imbalanced. We could be really, you know, very intellectually, have so much there, not that much. But it works with our minds and our feelings. And so it goes through our minds, and the medium has to express it. So the only person really experiencing it, because it's subjective, is the medium. And it involves their intuition. So certainly you could have all sorts of things going on in your head that have absolutely nothing to do with the spirit world. And sometimes people just are not able to tell the difference. That's part of why the training is really important. You know, to be able to distinguish your own imagination from a genuine impression that's been telepathically placed in your head by the higher spirit personalities. Or, you know, just on a psychic level. I mean, if you're around someone, hanging out with them, and they're thinking about pizza, and you start thinking about pizza. Why? Because your energy fields are blended in. Or maybe, you know, one of your children is living in another region, another state, and you just feel that, you know, your daughter, your son is having a real problem. And it's not, you're not getting it from spirit, but because you guys are connected mentally, it's something external that's put in your head. Now that's different just from your imagination or from things that come up from an unconscious level within your own memory bank. So with the training, it's learning how to differentiate between those things. Because you really want to be accurate with what you're giving. You want to be honest. And there really shouldn't be delusion involved in this. But I mean, there is. That's just what ends up happening. And I mean, even you have people that they want to believe something. And so they let themselves believe it. But it's not necessarily, all of what we're dealing with is objective reality. And we're dealing with facts, and we're dealing with truth. And so in terms of evidential type of information, one thing that is good about if we ask for evidence from the spirit or require evidence is that type of information, you can actually validate it. But if I just told you some kind of weird, far out thing, I mean, how do you prove it? And maybe I really am getting that stuff. But you want to test it, don't you? Don't just believe it. It's really important. Use your intelligence when it comes to this stuff.
I want to ask you one more question, and then I'd like to be able to allow the viewers a chance to ask you some questions too.
It's really good.
I know, right? And so hopefully they might have some questions to throw at you. If you were to give your best advice for someone that was wanting to start out with mediumship at the very beginning, what advice, what would you share with them as to the best steps for one to take?
I guess the big things that I would say to do, let's say someone starts to get into this, maybe they're having experiences or maybe not. I mean, the big thing would be, I think, just intellectually to learn as much about it as possible. And there's a lot of books. There's so many books out there, and I think some books are better than other books. But the big thing is anything you read and you study, take it for what it's worth and compare what different people say about it. But intellectually, learn about it. You know, how it works, why it works. You know, what the whole process is. And then I think it's also a really good thing if someone can go to, you know, take some type of class and everything too. I think it's good for someone probably to have more of a foundation in developing psychic awareness, you know, and meditation just before they start opening up with the spirit world. I mean, the spirituality is also really important too. And I think a lot of times people separate or they divorce the spirituality from it. You know, I'm going to be a medium, and it's, oh, look at me, I'm a medium. I can do all these things. I can bring people through and impress people at cocktail parties. But that's not really what it's about. You know, it really should be something where it should align with what you're doing on a soul level. And once you get into it, you won't be able to escape. Isn't that true for a lot of you now that you've gotten into it? It's probably really enriched your life.
Yes.
You know, it's a good thing. And you got to think about how many people you can help here in the physical world, but also all these people in the spirit world. So you want to be the best possible channel for spirit that you can be. And you can really sincerely pray, you know, and ask to be used to help others. And you'll see your wishes will come true. Because they want to work with people who are sincere.
That's wonderful. I love it. Now, I'm going to see if anyone else had any other questions to ask you, Stephen, that perhaps you haven't touched on.
Can you hear me?
Well, I can hear you.
Okay, I was just wondering, like in my situation, my mediumship would have come first, and then my spirituality. I would have reconnected with my spirituality as a result of my mediumship. Do you find that unusual?
Well, I think that a lot of times people, they start having these experiences, it does get them to become spiritual. I mean, it's a good thing because people start to think, my gosh, I'm not my physical body. There's life after death. And that's kind of the purpose. I mean, when you think about
I would have always known that. But I would have become more spiritually connected after developing my mediumship.
I think that's what would happen.
The other way around.
But also think about the people that might go to a medium. I mean, and this is really the purpose behind it. I mean, let's say you have some of the very materialistically oriented and they go to a medium, and the energy that's conveyed plus the information that's conveyed, depending on the connection, that can really awaken someone on a soul level. It's not just about, oh, I'm going to entertain you, or I'm going to bring through and show that your mom's here, your father's coming through from spirit. It's really to awaken the consciousness of that individual and get them connected to themselves as soul, but also to God. That's really the higher
It's funny
purpose.
because even after, like, with the mediumship development, and I sit in a few circles, and I've done a lot of workshops, and I've taken from each workshop what resonated with me. But I work every morning with a woman in the UK. She's written a book called Zoetic Soul, and it's only through her that I've learned how to connect with soul. And as a result of that, I'm getting much deeper readings.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. See, there's different levels of how you can work. Now, the average
it's amazing.
Where are they? They're like on this astral level. Now, the higher personalities are way past that, and they actually facilitate someone on the astral level coming through. But you can get really caught up in this whole thing where I've got to be evidential. I'm just going to bring through your mom, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with this. It's not that it's better or worse, but
no,
there's a whole soul level of working and everything. You know, they'll get into your past lives and everything. And if any of you are interested, I am going to be starting next Thursday. I'm going to be having an online mediumship course for 4 weeks, but it's going to be on past life readings and working more on a soul level.
Yeah, I've done that. It's very interesting.
But
I'd recommend it to anybody.
It relates directly to the evidential type of aspect of mediumship, but it gets into it a little bit deeper and everything. But see, some people, unfortunately, they don't really value that. You know, they don't understand it in a lot of ways. You know, it's very easy to be stuck in a certain way and think, oh, well, this type of mediumship isn't any good. Mediumship has to be this way, and then put it in a box. And that's not
to learn from past lives.
Well, what's happened to us in our own life, in this life when we're little kids and stuff, you know, growing up, it affects us now potentially in a detrimental way or a good way. Same thing with stuff that's before this life, that you can people bring in baggage and they're not even aware of the baggage, and then it affects how they live. So it's all about healing and evolution.
That's fascinating, though.
And you said have you never taught that class online yet before, Stephen?
Well, you know, a lot of my mediumship kind of gets into that stuff anyway, but I haven't actually taught that as a course. I want to see. I have one group which is on Tuesday nights. But that's when your class is, isn't it? Don't you have a group on Tuesday nights?
It is, which is why I
saw that, which is really cool.
Yes.
But anyway, so I have a group on Tuesday. I'll plug myself a little bit. I have a group on Tuesday night, and that's going on for another 2 weeks. That's an evidential mediumship, advanced techniques that work. And then I want to start that up for another 4 weeks as well. And that's a really good group. But I wanted to do something different that was kind of not just focused in on bringing through, you know, loved ones and typically what you see, and that's going to be starting on April 16th. And that's going to be on basically, you know, journey of the soul, the power of past life readings, and we'll get into that. Well, I'll probably do some like past life regression type work too, but it's connecting more with the higher teachers in spirit, and then bringing through information to actually help the recipient with their soul progression.
Well, that sounds wonderful. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'll be doing that more. I know, because you said you weren't free then and everything, but I'll probably have that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to join for that in the future. Now, is there any other questions? Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask Stephen?
Thinking them, but they're just shy.
I know, right?
I'm Irish. I'm not shy.
No, Irish and Scots are very direct. Which is a good thing. I like that.
Okay. Anyone else have anything that they would like to ask Stephen while they have the opportunity? Go ahead.
I do. Have you found that most people do decide, oh my gosh, I'm a medium, and then the spirituality comes, or do they tend to be pretty equal, or does the spirituality come first?
That's what happened with me. I mean, I know a lot of people who go, I'm a medium, and they're not really that spiritual at all.
I was spiritual from the very get-go, because my parents never forced me to go. I wrote it in the chat. They never forced me to go to any kind of a church.
Yeah, I was the same way myself too.
My father was one of the most phenomenal psychics I've ever met in my life. And he said, you're going to find your own way. And pretty much I did. Coming out to South Dakota had a big thing to do with it.
Yeah, well, that's nice. South Dakota is so cool. The energy there, it's really pretty neat. The whole area.
It's unbelievable, the energy that is here.
And you probably don't have
outside grounding.
The whole virus situation either where you are, because it's isolated, relatively speaking.
We have very low cases. There's none in my county. Very, very, thank you. None in my county. So pretty safe area, you know. But this area where I live is extremely spiritual, and you can feel the energy that is out here everywhere. I love it.
I just remember sleeping out in the car and waking up to buffalo right near the car.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing stuff, you know, because there's that's the vibrations.
Not something you want to do. A lot of people get hurt by buffalo out here.
Well, you know, it's not my fault. They just parked, but you know, that they just want to sleep near the car. I guess that's where they were.
I know where you were camped. I know where you were camped. Believe me, I know where.
This is like years ago. It's like 30 years ago or something. But anyway.
Yeah, but have you noticed that a lot of people, it comes out of the spirituality that they do have?
Yeah, well, it's a
development.
That's the whole thing. Now, you got to also realize that there's people who have spiritual callings. Maybe they become a Roman Catholic priest, or they become a nun, or they go into some Buddhist order. But the higher spirits are going to work through those people. Now, they may be
Oops. I think I muted you by accident. Oh, dear. Stephen, I muted you by accident.
Oh, okay.
I was playing with stuff. My goodness, I'm sorry. I was trying to come to a chat. So they may not have heard your response, Stephen.
All right. Well, I'll respond again. So anyway, with mediumship, I mean, you can have someone they come into this life, they have a spiritual calling. Let's say they become a Roman Catholic priest, or become a nun, or they join some Buddhist order. They get really involved in things, and they're influenced by the higher personalities, but they might not necessarily know about mediumship or think about it in the certain types of terms. You know, they're touched by the Holy Spirit, but who's working with them? You know, like attracts like. God's working through them, but there's other higher personalities who are going to be drawn to them and are going to want to work through them to help people. So it's not like you have to, if someone has a spiritual calling, it's usually they come in with that. And that's part of their soul progression, is to help people with that. And so using the spiritual gifts that way is really, really, really good. The more spirituality, the more effective you can reach people.
I love that. I can look back at my existence and with the goals that I've had, and I reached, and then it was pulled out from under me. From age 4, I wanted to be a police officer to help people.
Wow.
Became a police officer, got injured on duty, lost that. And that has happened to several different things in my life. So it's kind of like preparation, but I still have that desire to help.
Yeah, you know, it's really good. And if you were a police officer, you'd probably be, you know, the psychic cop. You'd be helping people that way.
I actually did 3 cases. They handed me 3 old files of solved cases. It was a test to see if I'd make a good detective. And they handed me these 3 reports from the original reports on these 3 murders. And I'm looking, just all I did was scan down the report, and all of a sudden I'm looking at it, and one name is flashing in red. I went, oh God, no, don't reveal what yourself is doing here. I already taken a look at this guy right here again. And it was, on all 3, I pointed to the murderer.
Interesting.
It's very good.
It was weird, but that's what happened. And I was like, kept shaking my eyes like, no, I'm not seeing this.
I used to teach psychic detective workshops for that, going back, and you got all these people in law enforcement. And it's pretty neat because they start, you know, they're interviewing people and they start using their intuition and seeing right through the people. So it's pretty cool.
So, but, you know, I was taken out of police work for one main, and it's not spiritual reason. I was taken out of police work because we're not supposed to judge each other. And I was taken out of it when I made that realization. I was injured on duty and retired. Wow. We're not supposed to judge each other. That's not for the earth. That's for up there. So we do that to ourselves when we're up there. We're the only ones that can judge ourselves.
Hellfire and damnation.
Yes. Stephen, there's one other question within the chat. Someone wanted to know, so what is your thoughts when someone experiences perhaps a setback in their clairvoyance or one of their spiritual gifts? What are your thoughts on the idea of being blocked? You know, sometimes people say I'm blocked.
Okay, what I've experienced, or what I've seen over the years is, you know, you have people, let's say they're going to a circle, and every week, you know, the same people are going, it's a closed group, and the energy builds up, and, you know, you might be in a circle, and all these other people, they're having all these things happen, they're experiencing them, they're opening up, levitating to the ceiling, their clairvoyance is so vivid, and you just feel like you're sitting there. You're not getting anything, you're not seeing anything, nothing's happening. But I'll tell you this, so much is happening, but the real development's taking when you're sitting there, right? You're sitting in the power, but you've got the group energy that's collective. So the spirit operators, they work with your chemistry. They attune themselves to you. So the development, let's say we talk about clairvoyance or any phase of mediumship, it's taking place when you're actually sitting for development, not when you're giving stuff out or you're getting stuff. Does that make sense? Now, obviously, getting stuff and giving it out, there's learning that takes place there, but the real development is when they connect with you. So it's not something which maybe is apparent. It's not, you don't want to be so focused on what the results are. It's more important to be focused on the process of development. Does that all make sense?
Okay.
So you're going to find sometimes if you feel, oh, I'm blocked, you know, no, the other thing that can happen is you can definitely have someone that goes through something and then they really block things off for, you know, psychologically where they're at. That's a bit different. But usually what happens is you have someone going to a group, you know, they might feel a little bit held back about things anyway, or intimidated by people with more experience. And what do? You know, oh my gosh, I'm getting all this stuff, and then 3 weeks later, they're not getting anything. They feel I'm blocked. I'm wasting my time. You know, but you don't see the big picture. You're not seeing what's going on behind the scenes. The spirit teachers, they assess you. They figure out how they can develop you. And it's different for different people. How you'll develop is different. And so I mean, it's human to compare yourself to other people, but really, you really just want to, you know, trust you're there to work for the spirit world and trust that they know what they're doing. It's never wasted if you put the time into it. Now, sometimes you might need to change a group. You could be in a group where it's really disharmonious. Maybe you outgrow the group. Maybe how it's run, there's just no discipline. I mean, you get a lot of that with some, I mean, there's some groups that's really not run real well in terms of how it could be done in terms of opening up. And that's why the training part's really, really important. But even from these types of experiences, though, it's going to give you kind of a basis of being able to compare and contrast what actually is out there, so to speak.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I like that. I think that brings a lot of understanding. And I just have time for one more question, Stephen. If anyone else has one more question that they would like to have the opportunity to ask you. You know, I think we're approaching the dinner hour for many, so I think we've...
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we don't want to keep people here past dinner. It's only 2 in the afternoon here.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to make everybody laugh. Everyone's so serious.
It's very serious.
So I actually got slapped by spirit, and I didn't realize I was, I think Lorraine knows, I have my own shop, and as we're always being guided, and I kept on thinking that I couldn't do demonstrations, and I wasn't a good reader because I hadn't had that many lessons. So somebody came to my shop to do a dem. Now I was shown another medium who's very, very good. So Spirit had guided me to this medium, and I was to watch him. I watched him do his demonstrations. He learned from like the best. And then I had another guy that wanted, he asked if he could do demonstration. I said yes. And cut a long story short, he needed to go on my computer to post his poster, and I was standing behind him, and I got slapped by spirit, and I looked around, and I'm like, wait, why are you lot slapping me for? And it was because they were guiding me that I had to do my own demonstrations in the shop. But I mean, at that time, I was just like, why did I get slapped? But it's because I didn't think I had the confidence.
Yeah, they want to make you grow and learn. And the thing is, it's like, let's say, you know, the way you do it one way, like let's say 5 years from now, you're going to have, if you keep on doing it, it's going to expand so much and improve. So it's totally okay to goof up. It's part of the learning process. You know, we want to enhance things. We don't want to be stagnant, get stuck in one place. But it's a really good thing. The more classes that someone can take, but learn from different people and use what works for you. And your spirit helpers, they understand where you're at. So let's just say, you know, something doesn't go as well as it could have. Well, they'll make adjustments. The other thing too is, you know, we're only in charge of ourselves, in control of ourselves. We're not, although we can certainly affect or influence the conditions around us, sometimes when you work, the conditions might be really lousy or less than ideal, whether it's an individual you're working with or a whole group of people that you're working with. And there's things you can do to alter that. But the big thing is develop the strongest possible connection you can have with the spirit world. You know, work on your spirituality, you know, raise your vibration, and try to spiritualize your life as much as possible with your thinking and your behavior. And we know that like attracts like, so as a result, we just become much clearer vehicles for the spirit world to work through. And that's really, really, really important.
I just thought it was really funny that I got slapped.
Well, they'll kick you in the butt too. In a nice way.
I like that. And I like that comment that you just made there about spiritualizing your life. I feel that that's just
it's really important.
A wonderful way.
You don't want to separate that all and everything. It's not supposed to be. There has to be reverence for what's taking place. And if you, I mean, it's like you have this beautiful, you could go to the mountains, there's all this clear water, it comes down from the mountain. But if it went through some type of swampy area where there's all this mucky stuff got into it, the water's still clear, but then it's got all the muck in there. So you really want to be the best possible channel. I mean, you could take really clean water and put it in some cup, and the cup's all dirty. So it's better to be the best possible vehicle for the spirit world to work through. And, you know, we're human, we might mess up a bit or be imperfect, but as long as we're sincere and really trying to work on ourselves, they understand that. And greater things than I you can do is what Jesus taught. So that's really, when we get into the gifts of the Spirit, that's really what this is about. So it's pretty cool. But this is such a good thing. I'm really glad that you organized this.
I appreciate you bringing that philosophy into the interview, Stephen, and just spiritualizing our mediumship and bringing this understanding for everyone. And I'd like to thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to speak with you and to be able to just have this audience here. And I will be sending you a copy of this recording so that you may have.
That would be really good. Oh, let me just also say one or two things too. If anyone's interested, because I don't think I really know anyone else, please send me your emails and I'll put you on you'll get lots of spam from me. I'll put you on my email list, and also just what region you're from too, because I have different emails according to, you know, where you are in the world. The other thing is I do have my book, Mediumship Mastery, and I'm sure a lot of you have it, but that's available on Amazon, and it's not about me. It's really just for learning mediumship, the mechanics. It's very good for people running groups. There's many, many good exercises, and it's used as a textbook worldwide for teaching mediums. I do individual mentoring, one-on-one. I do all those types of things. And I have a lot of online courses. I'll be having one starting next Thursday at the end of the month on Tuesday nights as well. And I'm really into the teaching aspect, and I'm really into what Lorraine's doing. And anyone like her who's out there teaching, I'm really there to support and help. And we're all in the same, you know, it's all part of the same mission with what is it. And education is just really important, healing and education. So that's kind of where I'm at with this.
Well, your book was actually one of the first books that I picked up that related directly to mediumship, and I do believe it's like the Bible of mediumship. I would recommend that to anyone that it doesn't matter what level of mediumship one is at. It just is, it really is the perfect textbook to understand mediumship. So and I'm very thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to speak with you further about that, Stephen.
It's a real blessing to be able to come on. It's really a blessing to meet all of you, even though some of you are really shy and didn't say anything. It's still really, 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 really good to be here. And, you know, if I can help you in any way, don't be shy. You know, feel free to get hold of me, and I'm here. I'm pretty accessible. I'm not on a pedestal. We don't want that.
And Stephen is a member in the group, so and he does pop his head in once in a while, and so you know what, you can, if you need his email address, please tag him and let him know if you need any information, and he'll be happy to oblige.
Yeah, well, I want emails for my list too, because that way, if you're interested in the stuff I do, you'll know what I'm doing just in general. Right. I'll send it out. So just email me or put the email somehow. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much again, Stephen. It's been lovely to have this opportunity.
God bless you, and God bless everyone. And stay safe. And those of you eating dinner, have a really nice dinner.
Thanks again. All the best.
Take care now. Bye-bye.